Blog Talk Radio, the world's largest online radio network.
Welcome to World Footprints Radio, the show where we celebrate responsible travel, culture, and heritage. Featuring your hosts, Tanya and Ian Fitzpatrick. Now, World Footprints Radio.
Today on World Footprints, we'll contemplate the personal boundaries of stone walls with Ansel Adams' protégé, Mariana Cook. We'll look at the fusion between eco-couture and glamour, and we'll learn from one traveler about her initiative to fight human trafficking, and we'll also talk about Dubai's green initiative. Hello everyone, thank you for tuning in to World Footprints, the leading voice in socially conscious and responsible travel and lifestyle. We're your hosts, Tanya and Ian Fitzpatrick, and we're going on a real eclectic and exciting journey today.
Yes, we are. Today on World Footprints, we will discover the personal boundaries of stone walls with photographer Mariana Cook, the last protege of Ansel Adams.
I started thinking about what walls meant between people, and I went and looked at the spot where the cows might have crossed, and I realized just how beautiful the wall was.
We'll hear how fashion designer Elizabeth St. John fuses glamour with elegant couture and leaves a positive impact in others' lives.
The fabrics that we use are comprised of 100% recycled plastic water bottles. So that is a source that is sustainable. It's actually green because we're recycling product.
After hearing about the travesty of human trafficking while on travel, Deborah Sigmund founded Innocence at Risk to fight child exploitation and human trafficking.
You're telling me there's a whole business? And she said it's the whole entire business. I met many people turn the other way, and sometimes the governments are involved with cover-ups.
With all of the development occurring in Dubai, a special commitment to make it sustainable is underway, as we learn from one of the representatives of the United Arab Emirates, Sal Al-Noe. This is World Footprints with Ian and Tanya Fitzpatrick. Visit us and connect with us at worldfootprints.com.
Mariana Cook is an extraordinary photographer who is actually the last protege of Ansel Adams. Mariana's work can be seen in major museums throughout the world, including the National Portrait Gallery in Washington, D.C., and the National Gallery in London, England, among many others. She has produced several amazing portrait books, including Fathers and Daughters, Couples, and Mathematicians. And she joins us today to discuss her newest photographic book, Stone Walls, Personal Boundaries. Mariana, welcome to World Footprints.
Pleasure to be with you.
Now, I have to ask you, I have loved Ansel Adams as long as I knew how to carry a camera. What was it like studying under such a great man?
Well, he's a lot of fun, for one thing, and he was very supportive of me and my work, and he taught me my craft. But he had a great sense of humor and obviously a remarkable sensibility for light and shadow and texture and tonal range. And he taught me how to express what I saw and felt.
Did you have the opportunity to travel with him when he traveled around, the country, the world, on some of his photo shoots? Were you able to accompany him on any of those?
He wasn't photographing when I knew him. He was already 76, I think, when I met him. So at that point, he wasn't really photographing anymore. But I was in the darkroom with him while he was printing.
And there's a lot you can learn in the darkroom, having grown up myself with a couple of photographers in the family.
That's right.
Now, your new book, Stone Walls, Personal Boundaries, this was inspired by a wall surrounding your house in Martha's Vineyard. Tell us about what prompted you to photograph these figures.
Well, it's actually the wall itself is a boundary wall between me and my neighbor, so it doesn't actually surround our house, but it separates our properties. And it was the day before Thanksgiving, and it was quite warm. It then froze that night, And the 56 cows that were on my neighbor's land must have sensed the chill wind, and they came over before any of the rest of us knew it was going to be cold, and found a place to cross in this wall and sought shelter in our trees, and kind of dug up the lawn, which we had just planted. So there was some tension between me and my neighbor, and she just wanted to repair the electrical fence that had not worked properly, and I wanted to repair the wall in case she fixed the fence and it didn't work properly, and we had the same thing again. So I started thinking about what walls meant between people, and I went and looked at the spot where cows might have crossed, and I realized just how beautiful the wall was. I mean, nobody would say, "Oh my gosh, that's a gorgeous wall," if they went by it. But the more I looked at it, the more I realized that it was quite beautiful in the landscape, up close, and parts had fallen down. And Stonewall's Personal Boundaries is really structured as that kind of narrative. The first section is called Personal Boundaries, which is the subtitle of the book, and it's pictures of walls in landscape, in England, all over the Mediterranean, in Kentucky, and on Martha's Vineyard in New England. And the second portion is called Containment, where I'm right up close photographing the abstractions of how stones are placed together, and the lichen and the shadow of branches on the stones. And then the third section is called Back to the Earth, and those are photographs of walls tumbling down. And because the book concentrates on farm walls and boundaries, personal, not important walls like Hadrian's Wall or walls that were built by lots of people for reasons of power. It's a common story all over the world of the decline of the family farm, and this third section depicts that decline.
Mm-hmm. Now, it took you 8 years to produce this collection of works. Where did you travel, and how did you identify the subjects that you wanted to photograph?
Well, an archaeologist showed me around the Peak District in Britain. I happened to meet him when I was working on my book of portraits of scientists, and he told me I should go to Western Ireland. So that's what sent me to Inishmaan. And then I was also in France, and I was going to have a section on France, and another archaeologist who was advising me there said I really should include other places in the Mediterranean. So that took me to Majorca, Malta, and Sicily. So then there's the Mediterranean section. And there are 6 essays in the back of the book. One is on the Mediterranean, one is on Britain. I also went to the Shetland Islands. There are a lot of walls on islands. There's a section on Peru. Even though those aren't farm walls, the juxtaposition of the stones in Machu Picchu and places like that were just so fantastic. And in the end, I'm an artist, so I want to make images that speak to me.
Mm-hmm.
So Peru is also included in the book, and Kentucky, and New England, and where else did I go? Yeah, Mediterranean, Ireland, Britain, lots of places.
Now, you mentioned that, I mean, as an artist, and I understand your comment that, your subjects speak to you. And so what is it about really the history? I see your book as being kind of a historical essay as well. But so what is it about the history and the messages that walls send that really resonated with you? And is there a wall that really spoke to you during the course of this, your research?
There's one on the island of Inishmaan. You see it, and it looks like a farm wall. It's a lace wall, which means it has spaces between the stones. So when you look at it, you think, gosh, I wonder why it hasn't fallen down. Well, the fact is that there are very strong winds on this island, and the wind would be strong enough to knock a wall down if the stones were pushed up right against each other. They would be stronger than the wall. So if you leave spaces between the stones, the wind has some place to go and whistles through the spaces and leaves the stones intact. But when I came upon the wall, I thought, why is this wall here? Because it sits on a stone plateau. And I thought, why would anybody put a stone wall on a stone plateau? What are they doing? In fact, the English had pushed the Irish to the west because the land in eastern Ireland is more arable than in the west. And these poor Irishmen had to make sand. Out of sand and seaweed, they made a very rich soil that they put on these stone plateaus and grew crops and fed their animals from things that grew from the soil that they made on these stone plateaus. And with the decline of the family farm, which is part of the narrative of the book and the history of stone walls, they no longer make the soil because there aren't that many people farming anymore. So you just have the stone wall on the stone plateau. And it's really metaphoric for what's happening all over the world with family farms. Kids don't stay on the farm anymore. They want to go to the big city and make their fortune, or at least they used to. Mm-hmm. There was no point in using stones because if the boundary didn't last for more than 30 years, it didn't matter. The farm would have been sold by then. So people import barbed wire, or they import wood from someplace else. There isn't one tree on the island of Inishmaan, so they couldn't even make a gate into a field out of wood. But now, with the Industrial Revolution, you can transport materials and do things locally that you were never able to do before. And sadly, as Wendell Berry says in his letter to me at the beginning of the book, it imports an economy from somewhere else, and it does not support the local community. Mm-hmm. So the walls are falling down, and the farmers aren't building them so much anymore for practical reasons because their son is going to go off or their daughter is going to go off somewhere else. And it's very, very sad. I don't know that anybody's happier than they were when they had their family farm and they could make their own food and live together.
Well, on the flip side of that, is there a wall that you discovered that you felt was very inspiring and inspired, just optimism and hope and just an appreciation for the advances that we've made as a society?
No.
Wow.
I mean, that wall, I think, is remarkable, and it's I found that very inspiring because of its history and what people did. But no, I mean, now people build stone walls because they've decided that they're design elements, and if they're going to build a house, they want to have a wall and this and that. But these walls are made very self-consciously, and I mean, which isn't to say that they aren't more or less beautiful to look at, but they're not made by the person who lives in the house for practical reasons. And one of the things that was so fascinating was to see that regular people had such remarkable aesthetic sense combined with the practicality of how to get a wall to stand upright.
Well, you mentioned Wendell Berry, and I know a portion of the proceeds from your book, Stone Walls, is going to benefit the Dry Stone Conservancy in Lexington, Kentucky. Can you talk a little bit about the Conservancy and just the relationship there with that you have, the personal relationship you have with the folks of Kentucky?
Well, Carolyn Murray Woolley wrote the definitive book on stone fences, as they call them, in Kentucky, and I was very fortunate that she spent 2 days with me showing me around and giving me some of the history of the walls in Kentucky. She knows an enormous amount. And she and her daughter, Jane, started this Stonewall Conservancy, where they have workshops and people come and they're taught how to build walls and how to restore walls. And I just thought that was fantastic and wanted to support them by giving a portion of the proceeds to them to further their work.
Will you? What are your plans for exhibiting photographs from this book, or do you have an exhibition coming up of any of your works?
Well, I have an exhibition up at the moment at my studio at 962 Park Avenue, and that should be up for another month or so. and they have an exhibit. I actually have an exhibit in Fettle, England, of the work in a tiny town there at the Gallery on the Green, it's called. And but that's it. It was really meant to be. I mean, the pictures I think are beautiful, and they are large. They're about 1 meter square, many of them. So they are definitely artworks.
Mm-hmm. Indeed. And what is your website for our listening audience benefit to learn more about your work and even follow where you're going to be?
Oh, thank you. It's just www.cookstudio.com. But if you Google me, Mariana Cook, that website should come right up as well.
Oh, great. Mariana Cook, thank you so much for joining us today on World Footprints.
It's been a great pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Coming up, fashion designer Elizabeth St. John dresses us in elegant eco couture.
The fabrics that we use are comprised of 100% recycled plastic water bottles. So that is a source that is sustainable. It's actually green because we're recycling product.
Next, as World Footprints Radio continues.
Hi, I'm Alex from Baltimore, Maryland, and Tanya and Ian brought me to Baltimore by listening to World Footprints Radio.
For the latest and last-minute travel deals, visit the WorldFootprints.com travel portal to find exclusive, non-published sales on travel. Our dynamic travel deals page updates daily with the latest sales from our partners. You can't find these deals anywhere else, and we've seen sales for $9 per night for hotels and $49 airline tickets. So stop by WorldFootprints.com to see where you can go for less. Also, make sure you visit the travel marketplace for sales on travel essentials and services.
Hi, I'm Tanya Fitzpatrick.
And I'm Ian Fitzpatrick.
A few years ago, we decided to leave our respective legal practices to live a more purposeful travel life and help others leave positive footprints.
World Footprints was born and was quickly recognized for its award-winning journalism. We've covered events from the Olympics to a Titanic expedition, and we've discussed conservation, environmental, and public diplomacy initiatives.
Join us for award-winning radio and visit our website, worldfootprints.com, for daily travel deals and comprehensive travel information. Join award-winning World Footprints Radio, a leader in socially conscious travel, for inspiring, entertaining, and educational shows. Meet well-known guests like Bobby Kennedy Jr., actress Stephanie Powers, and director Ken Burns, along with other celebrities, newsmakers, and industry professionals who celebrate responsible travel, culture, and heritage and support public diplomacy initiatives. Travel with us to unique places around the world and join us on our efforts to raise awareness about environmental, conservation, and human rights issues, and learn what you can do to leave positive footprints one step at a time. Also, visit our interactive and informative website at worldfootprints.com.
Hello, this is Mertice Spadola from Gallery Mertice in Baltimore, Maryland, and I love World Footprints Radio.
And now, more of World Footprints Radio with your hosts, Tanya and Ian Fitzpatrick.
Welcome back to World Footprints. I'm Tanya Fitzpatrick.
Imagine how fulfilling your life would be if your work were your passion, and this passion provided a wonderful living but also allowed you to have a positive impact in the lives of others. Designer Elizabeth St. John is living a passion that she began cultivating at the age of 5. From that tiny beginning to now, Elizabeth is known for her elegant couture that is a masterful fusion of eco-friendly and glamour. Outside of her Silver Spring, Maryland studio, Elizabeth is also known for her humanitarian work. She donates a percentage of profits from her couture collections to charities that do hands-on work throughout the world, and she has co-founded the Universal Strategic Services Foundation, which works at the crossroads of human needs and the environment. Elizabeth, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
You're you're kind of the ultimate example of someone who leaves positive footprints one step at a time, which is our tagline. So I'm very happy to have you. I can't believe in reading your bio and looking at everything you've done, I can't believe that our paths haven't crossed until now. And I'll tell you, when I attended the DC Fashion Week a couple of weeks ago, your designs really wowed me.
I'm glad you enjoyed them.
Well, I could see myself in many of your designs, and so I'm happy to know that not only are you using sustainable materials, but you're a neighbor, and so I have quick access to you.
Well, come by anytime. I'm here for you, definitely. I'm glad to hear though that you enjoyed looking at the collection and actually saw pieces that you would want to wear. That's actually how I design. I try and design pieces that people will want to wear.
Mm-hmm. Well, your designs, I thought, my taste is generally very classic, classic with a flair, and I think that's what resonated with me, because a lot of the dresses, are classic, but they had that kind of artistic edge to them.
Wonderful.
So talk about your early beginnings. It's a blessing to know what you want to be at the age of 5 and then really to see that early dream fulfilled. Talk about those early days.
Well, I didn't really know that I wanted to do this as a living. It just seemed something that I was doing naturally. As a child, you're always curious as to what your parents do, and I thankfully was very lucky to have a mother that was a master tailor. So I would, to spend time with my mom, I would go down to her workshop and I would watch what she would be working on. And the two of us, as I would get older, the two of us would kind of work together in coming up with, creative pieces and things like that. So it just seemed natural to me to go into fashion.
Mm-hmm. But I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
But then when you studied, went into college, you actually pursued environmental studies.
Yes.
So was that kind of a detour from your original?
I guess you could say it was a detour. I didn't really think of fashion as a career, to be honest with you. It just seemed like something you did, like cooking and, cleaning and sewing. So it just seemed very natural to me. I didn't consider that as an option, to be completely honest. So when I went to college, I actually focused on what my personal interests were, and I've always loved spending time outside. I love animals. I love traveling. I just like the fact that we live on a planet. So I wanted to focus on something that was a little bit more tangible, and environmental studies was that.
And it seems as though, those studies actually provided a foundation for your commitment to work with sustainable materials.
Indeed, yes.
Now, in addition to one of the things I really loved finding out about you, that in addition to using 100% natural materials,
yes.
You are also on track to having your design studio, completely wind-powered in early 2012. Tell us about that.
Well, I'm happy to say that there's a lot of opportunity now if you do want to lower your carbon footprint and be a little bit more green in lifestyle. So a lot of the utility companies, for example, are offering alternatives to traditional energy. So we've decided that we're going to go 100% green on our energy needs. As you know, production is very intensive on energy. So we wanted to do whatever possible we could, obviously within our limited budget, but obviously in this case it works out well for us. But we were going to just reduce our footprint, and it started as something small. I wanted to initially put out a concept collection where we would waste as little materials as possible, and it just kind of expanded from there. And we decided to go 100% wind power actually by February. So in about 6 months we'll be completely green on our production.
Wow, I mean, you're really walking the talk in this instance. So, another thing that I've heard you say is that your natural talents are focused on fashion, but your passion lies with poverty alleviation and the environment, which we've discussed. And I know you've done a lot of work around the world. You mentioned you love to travel. You've left positive footprints in many places that you've traveled, and you've actually co-founded an organization that helped create vocational schools in Kabul and Port-au-Prince.
Yes.
Talk about some of your philanthropic activities.
Well, when I decided to go into fashion full-time, which I've been doing for a few years now, I kind of felt as though I wasn't doing enough to help others as I was when I was actually working overseas. When I had spent time in South America, for example, I realized that there was just extreme poverty that people in this country, and I grew up in this country, that don't realize exist. And with very small contributions, you can really make a huge difference in the lives of people overseas. And these are people that basically live off the land. So in order, for me to kind of help myself, I guess you could say, in my goals of trying to, reduce carbon footprints and things like that, I could help others in doing so as well. So we started the Universal Strategic Services Foundation with a couple of colleagues, and our first project actually that we wanted to do was the Inclusive Solar Power Project, which was basically aimed at providing long-term fixed-cost clean energy to poor parts of the world, so sub-Saharan Africa, Central and South America, and parts of Asia. And that sort of expanded into a more direct way of helping these people, in most cases women, like, for example, as you mentioned, the school in Afghanistan. A lot of the women in these parts of the world don't have the opportunity that Western women have. They don't have the education. There really just is no infrastructure for them. So we sort of wanted to put together a project that would not only help them better their lives, but would also provide for the future for the community, for their families, and in teaching one person, they can go on and teach others as well. And in doing so, they could also improve the lives of others that we wouldn't be able to directly.
So kind of like the principle, teach a man to fish, and he feed him for a lifetime, or he eats for a lifetime, kind of same principle.
Exactly.
I wanted to circle back to the materials that you use. Some people may not really understand how you identify natural, organic materials versus those that are not. I mean, what are some of the criteria for natural materials?
I think there is a little bit of confusion. When people think green, they immediately think organic, and it doesn't necessarily mean organic. And I'll give you an example of that. We use PET recycled fabrics for our linings. We use satin fabric. You cannot tell the difference between our fabrics and any other fabrics that might otherwise be used. But the fabrics that we use are comprised of 100% recycled plastic water bottles. So that is a source that is sustainable. It's actually green because we're recycling product, but it is not per se natural. It doesn't occur naturally like cottonwood. That being said, our other collections are also comprised of natural fabrics. So silk, for example, is a natural fabric. Cotton, linen we use in some of our collections. All of these materials are we try and source from sustainable sources. Our silks, for example, we source from places that will use vegetable dyes because the dyeing process is also very harsh on the environment. It does contaminate water depending on how it's used. So we minimize our use of materials that would otherwise be harmful.
Okay. And, and I know there's materials that others have identified as being eco-friendly, such as bamboo, which is, something that I love against the, my skin. But I also have heard that the process to making bamboo fabric actually uses a lot of chemicals in the process. Is that correct?
It is correct. Okay. It depends on the type of fabric that is being manufactured, but it is in fact correct. So you have to be very careful when you consider, the term eco-friendly, because it may be eco in one aspect, but in another aspect it could be more harmful than, say, a traditional process. Kind of going back to, a lot of your charity work, your community work, we just commemorated the 10th anniversary of 9/11, and I know that you received a special service recognition from the American Red Cross in New York for your work at Ground Zero. Congratulations on that. Thank you. And, everybody has a 9/11 story. What is yours, and what inspired you to do the work that you did that earned this recognition through the Red Cross? To be honest with you, when 9/11 happened, I had literally just moved to New York. I was unpacking my bedroom when the first tower was hit. I had the television on. My husband at the time was working for Merrill Lynch across the street from World Trade Center 1. I watched, just like everyone else did on television. I saw the towers come down. I, of course, scrambled to find my family and make sure that everyone was accounted for. But because I had literally just moved to New York, I felt as though I needed to do something for my new community. So in the days immediately after the attacks, we sort of mobilized, and I ended up working for the Red Cross chapter at St. John's University there, just a few blocks from the World Trade Center, and I helped oversee the care station that they had set up for the rescue workers that were actually digging and looking for people at the tower site. So I spent some time there, and I also volunteered for another organization that ended up setting up databases to track the family members and disperse payment out to the family members of the surviving family of the people that were unfortunately lost in the towers. So, that fall and early winter, I just remember being in southern Manhattan, and it looks like a blur to me now, but looking back, I'm actually very grateful that I had the opportunity to help in whatever small way that I could. Well, Elizabeth St. John, you are you're one of our favorite global citizens, and you give back in such a beautiful way. And anyone listening wants to purchase a Christmas present for me. The long red dress. That's I could see myself in this dress. But I'd like to send people to your website, because I know that although your dresses, your garments are sold all over the world, people can actually order online and have dresses custom made according to the kind of online tape measure. Right, you specify your piece. So, for example, if you like your red dress, you can have that dress tailored to what your specific needs would be. So if you want to make slight modifications to a piece, you can do that, and we'll make it specifically for you. It's just part of our green business model. We don't overproduce, so everything is made specifically for each individual headquarters. And what's your website? It's www.elizabethstjohn.com.
great. Elizabeth St. John, thank you so much for joining us today on World Footprints.
Thank you.
Human trafficking is a signature cause of World Footprints, and we appreciate joining forces with people like Deborah Sigmund, who shares a commitment to fighting this growing crime.
You're telling me there's a whole business? And she said it's the whole entire business. I met many people turn the other way, and sometimes the governments are involved with cover-ups.
Next as World Footprints continue.
Hi, I'm Johannes from Pretoria, Gauteng in South Africa. I love listening to, and I want you to support Ian and Tonya at World Footprint Radio. It is exciting.
Human trafficking is the fastest growing criminal industry in the world. One of the greatest myths is that human trafficking is only a third world problem, but neither education, wealth, age, race, nor social standing protects one from becoming a victim of human trafficking. Awareness and action are key to fighting this crime against humanity. To report human trafficking or to learn more, call the National Human Trafficking Hotline at 1-888-3737-888. Collectively, we can put an end to human trafficking one step at a time.
World Footprints Radio is an award-winning broadcast and leader in socially conscious travel. Hosts Tonya and Ian Fitzpatrick bring you entertaining and informative interviews with well-known celebrities, newsmakers, authors, and industry professionals, from environmental leaders like Bobby Kennedy Jr. and David Rockefeller Jr. to conservationists like actress Stephanie Powers and director Ken Burns. Tune in to hear travel journalism at its best. Visit unique places from around the world and stop by the worldfootprints.com website for comprehensive travel information, including special daily travel deals.
Hi, my name is Marcia Alexion, and I'm talking to you from Vancouver right now. I am originally from Brooklyn, New York. I've been living in Vancouver for about 20 years, and I love World Footprints Radio.
You're listening to World Footprints Radio, awarded as the best travel audio podcast by the North American Travel Journalists Association. Here's Tonya and Ian Fitzpatrick.
Welcome back to World Footprints. I'm Tonya Fitzpatrick.
As you know, the fight against human trafficking is one of World Footprint's major causes. Until recently, little attention had been paid to this crime, despite the fact that it is the fastest growing criminal industry in the world. In 2002, while on a trip in Europe, Deborah Sigmund first heard the phrase human trafficking. When she later learned about human trafficking and the challenges and issues surrounding this fight against crime, Deborah took her knowledge and turned it into action. In 2006, she founded Innocence at Risk, a Washington, D.C.-based nonprofit organization that was formed specifically to help fight human trafficking. Deborah, welcome to World Footprints.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me on.
You know, we talk a lot about travel being a transformative experience for everyone, but talk about a transformative trip for you. How did the topic of human trafficking come up during your holiday in Europe?
I was talking to a friend who was actually working on it, and every evening we would get back after an event. We were there for a special birthday celebration, and she would say, I have to check on these children. And I asked her how many children she had. She said, oh, I have a son, but this is not about my children. So I said, what do you do? And she said, oh, well, I'll tell you later. So finally, after 3 days, she told me that she was working with children that had actually been trafficked, and I had no idea what that was.
So it was really an eye-opening experience for you.
It was. I told her, I said, I know there's sick people that would take a child, but I said, you're telling me there's a whole business? And she said, it's the whole entire business. I met many people turn the other way, and sometimes the governments are involved with cover-ups.
And I know, having worked with, we've partnered with the United Nations Global Initiative to Fight Human Trafficking. They're one of our partners, and that was, a comment that they made too, and that, enforcement and prosecution is very difficult in these situations.
Exactly. Well, fortunately, that's changing. Changing in the United States. There are more and more arrests and more people are being brought to justice.
Mm-hmm.
And this is, we do need to continue this and certainly make tougher laws, easier to arrest the perpetrator and be in jail for a long time. As far as I'm concerned, they should throw away the key. But
absolutely, and I know you spent a lot of time researching the issue of human trafficking. You traveled to New York and met with Ricky Martin. You traveled to Stockholm and met Queen Sylvia. And talk about how those meetings helped shape the formation and the foundation for Innocence at Risk.
Well, in the beginning, I learned a lot about it through information from Interpol, and I heard President Bush bring this to the world's attention when he actually addressed it to the United Nations at the UN General Assembly. And what it did, it actually gave me the confidence to speak about it publicly. I mean, I talked among my friends, and because we were all mothers. And then coincidentally, I met at a dinner party the person that was in charge of international global affairs, who was responsible for the issue, Paula Dobriansky. So I began at the State Department as a request or invitation of the State Department. I went to New York and heard Ricky Martin address the General Assembly there, and that was very important and expressed, and shaped. Let me know that what I was doing was equally as important. I mean, meeting Ricky Martin and hearing his passion about the issue, I was so pleased, to hear it. And I said, I'm so glad you're doing this because we need attention to this issue. And he said, well, it's going to take all of us, all of us. And then I was talking to a dear friend who started Vital Voices, and she let me know that Queen Sylvia had been involved with this fight since the late 90s and suggested that we interview her we were producing an awareness film at that time. So we traveled to Stockholm, a film producer and myself, and met with Queen Sylvia. And from Queen Sylvia I learned it's okay to talk about this because these are children and they have no voice.
Mm-hmm. And I think, you raise a really good issue. A lot of people are very uncomfortable. It's an uncomfortable topic because it's an unconscionable crime. And I know education, greater awareness, those are keys. And action, really. Those are keys to fighting this on a global scale. In the nearly 6 years that Innocence at Risk has been operating, you've hinted a little bit about how the fight against human trafficking has changed, and I'm wondering how your organization has adjusted to these new changes, whether it be greater awareness or, in some cases, still in countries, apathy.
Well, there's more general awareness. Certainly we've contributed a little bit to that, certainly in the Washington area, in the philanthropic world. People would say, oh, well, so-and-so cares about that issue you care about. It was really just not spoken about. And I said, look, these are children, and this is happening everywhere in the world, and it's happening in our city. We need to do something about it. And through our awareness events, we believe awareness is prevention. And we know that once you're aware of something with your own child or your neighbor's child, you will just act accordingly, and it will be on guard. And just, we're not alarmists, but we just want people to be realistic that this is happening in the world, and if it's over a $32 billion industry, then no child is safe.
Yeah.
So don't let your daughter go off to Aruba by herself, and don't leave your children alone in a park or in a mall. And the other example of a wonderful awareness tool was the movie Taken with Liam Neeson.
Mm-hmm.
That did more for awareness in this area than, I believe, any other film. And what we say is what happened in those scenes in Paris before it happens on our streets and our malls in our airports as well. And we've also began, flight attendants came to us and said, we need help. We see what you're talking about, and we don't know what to do about it. So we produced a blue training manual, which started with one flight attendant. Now we have a few thousand out there working on this issue, thanks to our partnership with airline ambassadors and Nancy Rivard.
Who's been on our show.
Oh, she has, great.
Yeah, she's a friend.
Well, great. She's an angel. But we've been able to expand this, and now Nancy and I were just in New York with the First Lady of the Dominican Republic, who said she's going to begin in her country with training airport personnel. This is a big step. But what we've learned from flight attendants is that just open your eyes and report what you see, and you don't have to be a flight attendant. You can be just a knowledgeable passenger who cares. You see a child or a young girl or young boy, check out where they're going. And if things don't look right, if there are too many red flags or one red flag, just report it to the flight attendant. So I think you should ask for this to be checked out.
Well, and I think awareness would have, or actually it saved the life of the young boy. I don't know if you remember the story about a year ago. The young boy is flying from Philadelphia, I believe, on U.S. Airways, and, several red flags. The ticket agent asked the male adult who this child was traveling with for this young boy's name. He couldn't give it off the top of his head. He was rifling through papers. The little boy looked despondent, and long story short, there was a fellow passenger who actually, I believe, had gone through some training. She was a stewardess, but flying as a
passenger.
And because of her awareness, and she actually engaged the little boy, and she asked him, are you looking forward to going to Florida? And the little boy said, oh, I thought we were going to North Carolina. And that was enough for her to alert the flight attendants on board. And so when the plane landed, authorities were waiting for this man, and in fact that child was a victim of human trafficking. And so just because of that awareness, and so I love what you are doing, and I love the fact that you've partnered with organizations like airline ambassadors, and you've gotten a lot of congressional support and informed those strategic partners that I think are really critical in this battle.
I've testified to the Human Rights Commission about our initiative, our flight attendant initiative, and said we need support. We have tremendous support from a division of Homeland Security, which is ICE, Immigration Custom Enforcement, and Custom Border Patrol. And what they have asked is that we inform the flight attendants or airline personnel if they have any red flags, please report it. But they can so easily check it out. And passengers don't even mind. Not that they would be disturbed about this, but people want to know. People want to know what they can do, and they want to know how they can help. And one way they can help is open your eyes, talk about this issue, turn a million eyes on this, and make it very difficult, make it impossible for this to go on. Because we really do have to wake up America, and wake up the world, that we can do something.
Indeed. And, one of the myths that we continue to fight against and share is that this is not a third world issue. This is not a socioeconomic issue. This is not a gender issue. Human trafficking is a non-discriminatory crime. Anybody, whether you're male, female, young, old, rich, poor, living in an affluent area or a third world slum, anyone can be a victim of human trafficking. And I was really shocked to read on your website, in fact, I know that human trafficking is a $32 billion industry, but what shocked me was that in our area alone, in the D.C. area, child trafficking is a $100 million industry, and
Annually.
Yeah.
Annually.
Yeah. That's I have a really difficult time even grasping that number. It's so astronomical, and I can't. Oh my goodness, I'm really speechless.
It's startling, and it was to me as well. And New York is worse. Even these figures come from the FBI, and I think they're even greater. It's estimated that approximately 300 children are caught up in the sex trade within the United States every year.
Mm.
And it is heartbreaking. It really is. And it's just, we need to stop it. It's so much easier to prevent it before it happens, because once the young girl or boy, woman, is a part of this world, it's very difficult to find them, and it's very difficult to get them out. I mean, it does happen, certainly, and God bless all of the NGOs that work with the survivors, because that is truly God's work.
Indeed.
And we support them, and our hats off to them. And we also partner with Polaris, who run the national hotline number, which is 888-373-7888. And so if you see something anytime at a mall, or something that doesn't look right, or in the street, or if you see someone at getting a child, or someone driving by an area with children, report the license plate. That's something you can do.
Mm-hmm.
Report what you see. And the hotline is 24 hours, and it's there and ready to to act on your information.
Indeed. Now, I know that your organization, Innocence at Risk, holds several events throughout the year. And for those listeners who are not in the D.C. area, what can they do to help support your efforts and your mission?
Well, you can go online, and you can or call our office and make a donation. We do not get government funding. We've never really wanted to stand in front of service providers. We do believe that our flight attendant initiative is working, and it's saving lives, and it's definitely prevention. So with that, we have applied for funding, and hopefully when the economy turns around, somewhere down the road, we'll be able to get that. But we've been able to raise funds privately. And right now, Innocence at Risk and Airline Ambassadors are partnered in an event next week at the Mayflower Hotel, Stand Up for Children Gala. And we have Gabriela Ferreira presenting the performers of the Miami Sound Machine coming to perform. And they're basically doing this at their, they're donating their time. And Gabriela is a new Latino singer who's taken on this cause, and she's actually written a song about the issue. So we're thrilled about this event. People can send a donation for it. The proceeds will go for, it's a huge awareness event itself, which we hope to bring in a lot of people and a lot of support to get involved and just turn a lot of eyes on the issue. And secondly, our joint awareness materials that we produce for all flight attendants and airline personnel come out of our office, and we'll be doing this with airline ambassadors. So it's an ongoing effort, and we don't rest. We continue to talk about this and go around the country, actually. So we also go to other cities. I've been to Florida and Chicago and Texas. So we will continue doing this, and those awareness events really help.
And, of course, a link to Innocence at Risk will be on the radio show page on our website. And Deborah Sigmund, God bless you for all the great work you're doing. This is wonderful work. It's important work, and I thank you so much for joining us today on World Footprints.
Thank you so much for having me. I mean, what you're doing is key and essential, and you're helping us spread the awareness.
We recently sat down with Saud Al-Nawais from the United Arab Emirates Embassy in Washington, D.C. to talk about the growing development in Dubai and the country's commitment to maintaining cultural and environmental integrity.
With all of the development that's taking place in Dubai, and what's being done to ensure that this development respects the integrity of the environment, sustainable development?
One thing I can assure you is, and actually I've worked on several environment projects, there was a report published a couple of years ago by the Global Footprint Network, and it actually ranked the UAE as the highest carbon emitting country. We were very alarmed. We said, we can't be promoting ourselves and business and finance and tourism and neglecting the environment, which was one of the major priority of our late founding father, His Highness Sheikh Zayed bin Sultan Al Nahyan. This is someone who loved the environment, someone who loved greenery, someone who came out of the Bedouin tribes from Al Ain, from a spring. So this was very essential to our culture. Some way along the line, this was neglected. However, whenever a development is being made, there's always environmental consultants there. I remember we created a task force, if you want to call it, to go and try to verify the numbers at the Global Footprint Network. We said maybe they were wrong. In fact, they weren't. They were right. But we went back and we said, all right, what can we do about the environment? One, we are now trying to switch our electricity generation from burning gas into nuclear. Believe it or not, nuclear is one of the zero carbon emitting energy technology. However, obviously there's a problem with the waste, but that's a global problem that we as a country have to work with other countries to find a solution for. But at least this is a very positive step forward. The government has placed a policy that by the year 2020, 7% of our energy portfolio needs to be from clean tech, from solar, from wind. So that's what's being done, at least from an energy perspective. Another concept we talk about today is sustainability. Sustainability and living in a clean environment. So we're actually doing an experiment in the UAE. We are building a city that will be only powered by solar and wind. No cars are allowed inside. The infrastructure is built around making sure that carbon cannot enter the city, that it's protected. 40,000 residential units. Only clean energy companies can actually locate in that city. So we're trying, it's called Masdar City. It should be ready by 2014. In Abu Dhabi. It's in Abu Dhabi, but it's a smaller sort of plot of land that can house around 40,000 people and another 50,000 commuting to and from the mainland of Abu Dhabi into the city. So that's an experiment. We're raising the bar. We're hoping to achieve our objectives. If we don't, we're more than happy to invite the international community, the scientists, to come and tell us how we can improve it. But at least it's a step forward. A lot of the companies helping us develop the city is actually from California and San Francisco, because those are sort of the two states here in the US that are more clean energy, sustainability living oriented. The third element is green buildings. I know that the US calls it the LEED system. You have that LEED certified. We sort of took that model, restructured it, and we called it the Pearl rating system. So Pearl, exactly. We always like to take, we adapt some Western policies, we add to them, we minus from them, we make sure that they fit our environment, and we also like to brand them in our own words. So the Pearl system, basically what it does is it places guidelines for existing buildings to turn them into green and energy efficient. And all new buildings coming online as well, it sets the guidelines for them and what needs to be done in order for them to be green. So, water recycling, energy efficiency, appliances, all these things are really hot in the UAE. So we're very glad that a report criticized us, because it was sort of a wake-up call. It was an alarm for us, saying, look, you're neglecting this important piece. And believe it or not, without it, you won't be able to survive.
So I think...
Thank you very much. Thank you.
We're happy that you were able to join us today, and if you want more of World Footprints and everything that we have to offer, including travel deals and our library of archive shows, follow us, friend us, and connect with us at worldfootprints.com. We're Tanya and Ian Fitzpatrick, and we'll see you on the air again next week. And until then, we wish you blue skies and purposeful travel that leaves positive footprints one step at a time.
Hi guys, my name is Sandy Best, the Sandy Best from Lake Louise. Where's Lake Louise? It's in Alberta. Alberta's in Canada. Banff National Park. Natural beauty. The only place you should go with is World Footprints Radio. They spend their time looking at those special places. There are not tourist traps. There are not thousands of people. For the best on the planet, go with World Footprints Radio.
World Footprints Radio is a presentation of Travel and On Media Productions.
Blog Talk Radio, where millions of hosts and listeners gather.